Hello and welcome again to another episode of Battle Ready.
Ready.
Today, we thought we would talk about sort of a follow-up to our Seasons of War Thondia review. Now, we talked about Seasons of War Thondia when we first got the book.
With our own dollars.
With our own dollars, that's true. And we had done some of the narrative play stuff. And we talked about it. I'll link it probably up there. But now we've had a chance to go through and play the entire matched play campaign, Strife and Thondia. And I thought we'd talk about whether it was worth it, whether it was fun, what worked well and what didn't. So that if you're, one of the things is these reviews come out from a lot of content creators and they say, here's a bunch of things that are in the book, and then they never talk about it again.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard sometimes to use that to determine whether or not you're going to buy something because you're like, well, I'm glad I know what's in it, but is it good, right? Is it right for me? And they just don't, they're trying to get the content out as fast as possible. And they're trying to, they haven't had the experience of playing it yet.
Yeah.
But we have had the experience of playing it.
All obviously. 5 games.
This is much, way after it came out, right?
Yep.
It came out last year. So, but we thought we'd talk about it. So, high level, Strife and Thondia, was it good or was it bad?
I'd put it in the middle.
Put it in the middle? I would put it in the good column. I think overall I liked it. Not perfect, and we'll talk about some of that. But overall, I would actually like to see more things like it. So, as just one little background, it's a very narrative campaign because what happens in the one sort of gives you a benefit in the next, and you're supposed to play them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row. And I really like that. In fact, I had overlooked it when we first looked through the book because I had expected that the narrative Path to Glory stuff to be like that. And the Path to Glory stuff is not like that. I mean, it's not. It's fine. I mean, some of the battle plans are fine. A lot of them are pretty dumb, where you just kill models. But the matched play one was actually pretty good. I want more campaigns like that where there's, a series of battles in a row and you can sort of see how the story progresses. It's in the matched play section, but and there's only 5, which is sad. There should be multiples of those. That's what I would like to see in the next Season of War, or in some kind of supplement where they're like, hey, here's 5 campaigns. So you end up with 25 battle plans. You can play them through. Here's what you do. I would really like to see that. Okay, so let's talk about what it did well and what it did poorly. And let's start with poorly. Criticisms.
I felt like it just didn't, the consequences weren't that big. It just felt like another rule we had to remember.
Yeah, so the consequences for winning or losing, and then you do get a bonus, the winner gets a bonus into the next one. But the bonuses are pretty mild. They're pretty mild. Now, I think partly that's because they put it in the matched play section. Yeah, so I think because they're in the matched play section, they didn't want the benefit to be over the top, right? So that anytime you're playing a matched play, the people are going to be still sort of even. So I actually liked that, but you're right. It did make the winning or the losing feel sort of like, If you win, that's cool. If you lose, it's no big deal. It would have been nice to see the campaign have a little bit more of impact. I think you have to do it in a way though that's because if it's too big, then whoever wins the first one, their advantages are so huge they win the second one and they win the third one. So maybe you make it so that whoever wins, they get a cool advantage, but then they get a worse starting area, or they have to win the next thing, it's a lot harder for them, right? So you could even it out in other ways, but it would be cool to have things way differenter than they were. Any other criticisms?
I feel like I was just playing Warhammer, like nothing special. I felt like I was just playing War Scrolls. I never felt like there was a special thing happening.
Well, there were special things, right? There was the relic, and you could steal the relic from the other side. So there were special things.
I just felt like I was playing Warhammer.
That's what we were playing.
I know, but like War Scrolls, like nothing, like no veteran traits, no battle. I just felt like we were playing worse.
So because we weren't using these do not use the General's Handbook, right? We don't use the bounty hunters. We don't use the battle bonds. So there's none of that. But I think they could have made up for that, like I said, by making the winning and losing a little bit different, and by putting just a little bit more narrative. Again, I don't want to fault them too much because it was in the matched play section, so I don't know that they're trying to make it very narrative. But they could have, and it would have been awesome.
Yes.
One thing you said before is that it didn't feel like you were in Thondia.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that. It doesn't feel... It would sort of be cool. Maybe not as extensive as the General's Handbook, but to have a battle pack that sort of like layered some extra things, so it really felt like, ooh, this is a little bit neat and interesting and different. Yeah. That would be cool. I don't know that it needs to be as heavy as the General's Handbook is, because the General's Handbook sort of adds a lot.
Yeah.
Right? So, but that would have been cool. Overall, though, I think that those negative things, and I think those are all truly negative.
Yes.
But I do think they're outweighed. At least I think they're outweighed by the good of it. I loved having won, whoever won the last one, going into the next one. Mm-hmm. Really, really liked that. I liked the continuing story, and I liked how we played it, right? So if you haven't watched it, we have all 5. We played all 5 as 1,000-point games. Definitely take a look at those if you're interested. Mm-hmm. And if you're not, the spoilers coming up. But it was cool to see how each game, my team won something, and then we got a bonus, and then your team won, and then we had the relic, and then the relic was lost, right? Because maybe you would have won and kept the relic, or I could have won and kept the relic, but instead the relic was lost. And then in the last one, we got to a place where we were fighting each other, and we ended up having a draw. So it was like we didn't have a story of one warband successfully destroying the other. We sort of had a story of
both being sad about what they did.
Yeah, everybody loses, right? The only right move was not to play it, because if you play it, everyone loses. So I did like that. I did like the way that the story unfolded. I just wish it had been more. Other things I liked about it, I thought that it scaled pretty well. I think, like everything in Warhammer, I think it's designed for 2,000 points. We were playing it at 1,000, but I think it scaled pretty well. And I also think it would be a good series to do with new players, right? Because it provides a little bit more of a story. You can do it at the 1,000-point level, so it's not crazy, right? And so I liked that a lot. What did you like about it?
I'm trying to think.
There's nothing you like? You hated every minute of it?
I just didn't think there was anything like special about it. I just thought I felt like I was just playing War Scrolls with a little thing to remember each time.
Well, I disagree. I thought it was really fun. And I also liked, for example, that we made our own little house rule that whoever the winner was, they had to keep their list the same. And then the loser could make changes to sort of counteract that. And then when they won, then they had to keep their list, and then the loser could make changes to sort of counteract that. So I liked that. I liked that it sort of gave the feeling of each side like coming into a conflict, and then the party that won is like, hey, we got this. We're not gonna do anything different. And the party that lost is like, all right, how can we modify things? What can we do here? I sort of thought that was cool.
Yeah.
But overall, I thought it was really fun. I liked it. I would love to see more of this kind of thing where there's 5 game sequences, and even there was a White Dwarf. We did it some time ago, playing the Caradron.
Oh yeah,
in a 3 game sequence, right?
And we had to destroy the Grudge server.
Yes, that one.
And I blew it up.
You did blow it up. But see how you remember, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh yeah, I remember how that is super cool. I like those kinds of games where there's or arcs or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Where there's 3 or 5 in a row, and you can play them and sort of like see how it turns out.
That's the one thing I just don't feel like there was a special thing that happened in this game.
Yes, I think that the Grudge server was way more memorable, right? Because it had a better story, it had a better tactic at the end. And
this one doesn't feel quite as memorable.
This one, it didn't. It wasn't, for sure. There was no big obelisk at the end to destroy, or some big change that was going to happen. There was almost no narrative. I mean, all the narrative we have is we sort of made up, right? It was us. It's headcanon.
Yeah.
And then
headcanon.
Very, very nice. And So I think if it had had more of that, if they'd really leaned into the narrative side of things, it would have been better. And that's actually what I'm saying. I think if I would like to see more of that and lean into the narrative more, have a campaign of 3 to 5 games where you have narrative. And I think Games Workshop hasn't been doing as much of that recently because the Path to Glory, while fun, is mostly about like adding to your warband and rolling stuff in the aftermath sequence, and that's fun.
Yeah.
But it's not about the game. Like every game is sort of self-contained, right? It's its own thing. And then in Warcry, there's campaign arcs, but they're just like, here, play these 3 battle plans. There's no story. There's nothing. And the 3 battle plans you play are ones you could pull from cards.
Yeah.
So there's nothing special about them. I would really like to see things that are more like Season of War Thondia, or more like that Caradron one from the White Dwarf issue, like, but blown up to 1,000. Make it big, make it memorable. Put it in open play, or put it in use match play rules, and then but have people play it knowing that these are, they're not supposed to be perfectly balanced. They're supposed to give you a experience. Make them as balanced as you can, right? Yeah. I generally don't like games where it's like, we have the castle and you are the attackers, and the people who have the castle get this bonus and this bonus and this bonus and this bonus, and the people that have the attackers get this penalty and this penalty and this penalty. It's like, come on. They're like, oh, it'll be fun. See if you can fight out of the hole. I don't want to fight out of I want to have something that's, close to being even, right? Even if it's not exactly close. So I think that they could do some stuff like that and it would be a lot more fun. Would you like games like that, do you think?
Where I have to fight over a hole?
No. Where like the Caradron ones, where there's more meaning to it, but it went like from one to the next over 3 or 5 stories.
But only if it's like has narrative.
Yeah.
And if I had a memorable ending.
Yes, I think with narrative, I don't think they need to do, the more the better, right? Yeah. But I think if they even put like 2 paragraphs of why we're fighting and what has happened, that would be enough. And then we'll sort of fill in the rest is on the table, right? So that would be really good. And having a memorable ending, I think, is super important because the ending on this one is just, you guys are super mad at each other, try to kill each other's general. Okay, that's a fine battle plan, right? That was fine. I had fun. You had fun, right? Yeah. That's fine. But it wasn't like, oh man, I fought 3 separate battles to get to the grudge server, and now I'm finally here, and there it is on the tabletop, and I have to swoop in and do different things to try to blow it up before I get killed. It's way more memorable, right? I think we need to see more of that, whether it comes in a Season of War, whether it comes in its own like separate supplement. Like maybe you take the GHB and instead of calling it the sort of match play, you call it tournament play, and then you have a separate GHB for like narrative where it's just that. It's just various stories. And you could make them like Seasons of War Thondia, where you play the same 5, these are the 5 you play in a row. Or you could even make it branching, where it's like, all right, you play these 2, and then depending on who wins, you go down this road or you go down this road for the last 3, right? Or depending on wins, you go down this or do this. That would be great too. I would love to see more of that stuff so that the battles had a meaningful carryover. Would I want to play that exclusively? No. I think we do it every other, right? So every other week, we're either playing a 2,000 point General's Handbook match play game, which I love. Yep. Or we're playing a 1,000 point system that either this or Path to Glory or whatever. And I like those too. They're quicker, they're fun, but I think they can be made more than what they are. Final thoughts?
No.
No thoughts.
No thoughts.
No thoughts at all.
No thoughts.
All right. Well, hopefully, let us know what you thought. If you have played Seasons of War Thondia, especially if you've played through Strife and Thondia, which is the match play set, let us know what you think. I'd be really interested to know if we're way off base here, or if there are others who would really like to see more supplements, whether they're campaign books or handbooks or whatever, that lean into this sort of narrative structure. All right. This has been another episode of Battle Ready. Thanks so much for watching.